Welcome to this lecture. This is Prof. David speaking. I've decided to present this lecture on the understanding population and sampling types because most of my students are still struggling with the concept of sampling. Okay, so in this lecture, I'm going to present to you two types of population and various sampling types. Okay, so we are going to look at immiscible population. Immiscible population, this is a population that you can mix. We'll see more of that. We're going to look at immiscible population. This is a population that you cannot mix prior to sampling. Okay, and also we are going to look at the major types of sampling. This is not an exhaustive list. So we are going to look at random sampling. Okay, we are going to look at stratified random sampling. We're going to look at cluster sampling, convenient sampling, snowball sampling, and purposeful sampling. Okay, so altogether it will be 6 types of sampling that we are going to look at. Okay, now let's go to the details. Immiscible population, we said, is a population that you can mix. So you can see here, you can mix the population, and the population should be in a confined area. So you can immediately see that there are certain types of population that cannot be mixed. For instance, if the population of a study are cars in the city center, so you will not be able to mix all the cars in the city center before you sample. You can have maybe trees, you can have fishes in the sea or in the ocean. So, and even human population, when you're doing a research on human population and you need to sample. So sometimes it's impossible to put all the people in one room, mix them before you do sample. So we say that that population is immiscible. So now we move to immiscible population. So you cannot mix this population, cannot be mixed. So the people or the population is not in a confined area, or it could be in a confined area, but mixing is definitely not possible. So when you have a population that you can mix, like in Lotto, we have the balls are mixed by the machine and balls are selected randomly. But in a population that you cannot mix, what can you do if you want to do a random sampling? Okay, because most of the researches requires researches require you to do a random sampling. So in cases where the population is immiscible, cannot be mixed in a confined area, like the balls in the lottery. So what do? You can get a list of the population, okay, or a database of the population. Then from there, probably the list can have numbers. Then you can do a draw on the numbers, you know. But it can be done by using softwares, computer softwares, and some calculators have softwares that you can use to do random draws. So if you have a list of immiscible population, you can also conduct random sampling. So that's the only way you can go around conducting random sampling using an immiscible population. So you just have to do some kind of a draw using some numbers, some serial numbers. Okay. Okay, so now you've seen the two types of population, the immiscible population and immiscible population. Okay, for those who are doing chemistry or those who are doing microbiology, sometimes when you are sampling, you swap and or you get your chemicals or anything that you want to sample. They always tell you that before you do your analysis, you must mix them. So that's one way you are mixing them so that the population of bacteria or the chemical becomes homogeneous. Then you sample. So that's some sort of a random sampling. People do it without knowing. Okay. Okay, so that's it. So miscible and immiscible population. So you can think about many other examples. So now that we've seen the two types of population, so now we need to look at the types of sampling. So the first one that I'm going to look at is random sampling. So we've touched on this one, random. You just mix. When you mix it, when you mix the population, then what you've done, you've made sure that the population becomes homogeneous. So by the time you mix and then you draw, so everyone in that population has a chance to be selected based on the fact that you've mixed them. So when you do that, we say you are conducting a random sampling. Okay, so random means that anyone in that population has a chance to be picked because the population is homogeneous. It's a homogeneous mix, and you do mixing to ensure homogeneous. So during the lotto draw, you will see that the balls are mixed before the draw is made. So every ball has a chance, to be picked, equal chance to be picked that you can actually measure using probability. So the moment you're doing that, you're doing random sample. So I have my population, I mix my population. So this is mixing. Then you have, this is a mixed population. Then you pick or you make a draw. Then this is your sample. So the moment you do that, then you are doing random sampling. Okay. The next one that we're going to look at is stratified random sampling. Okay. Stratified random sampling is a scenario whereby you have a population in which you have some inherent characteristics that can be used to put the population into groups. Okay, so you sort the population into strata, which strata simply means group. Okay, stratum is one, strata is many, so groups. So based on the inherent characteristics by members of the population. So members of the population have certain characteristics that can be used to put them into groups. So the easy one to think of is gender. Okay. So if I have gender, then I will have male and female group. So why do we do this? Okay, if you are conducting certain experiments, you find that if I don't divide the population into groups before I sample, I could introduce bias. Probably your research is sensitive to gender bias. It could be any other characteristic bias. It could be racial bias. It could be any kind of bias. Okay, maybe you are looking at people who are you are doing a research on students, and you want to include private schools and public schools, because if you don't do so, you can introduce some bias. So that's just an example. There are many other types of research whereby you have a population with profound distinct characteristics. And if you don't divide the population according to that characteristics before you sample, you can introduce bias. So the moment you are sorting out the population into groups before you sample, then we call it a stratified random sampling. Okay, random sampling in the sense that after I've obtained a group, I'm going to mix it. Okay, this is it here. I'm going to mix it, then I sample. Then this other group, I'm going to mix it here, then you sample. So the process of sorting out the population into groups based on inherent characteristics of members of the group, that one is you classify it as stratified random sampling. Okay. The next one will be cluster sampling. So if you look at the definition, sort population into clusters. Okay, the other one was sort population into stratas, whereby we said strata means group. Cluster also means group. But the difference is that unlike strata, which is based on inherent characteristics of members of the group, cluster sampling is based on characteristics defined by spatial or geographical distribution. So a group of population in a cluster is such a group will have certain characteristics that are linked to their by virtue of their spatial or geographical distribution. So all those characteristics that are linked by virtue of your geographical distribution, by virtue of your location, where you are located. So automatically we think about cluster sampling. So for instance, if you want to look at the socioeconomic status of the population, you find that those people who are living in high affluent areas are rich, and those people who are living in certain areas are relatively poor. So they are poor. So if I want to conduct a kind of a research that is sensitive to economic status, then I want to divide the population into maybe village, town, cities, of farming areas. Then, because people living in farming areas will be doing farming, people who are living in the city, CBDs, will be working maybe in businesses and informal jobs. Those who are in rural areas probably are doing subsistence farming or small farming, small scale farming. So you see, I can divide the population into cluster based on their socio-economic status. So there are many other examples like those who are doing animal studies. Okay, you want to look at the distribution of animals in the forest, for example. So you want to map marshy areas from the hills, from the lowland areas, because if you just try to sample, you introduce bias, probably you settle only on animals that are living in the highlands, for example. So you want to map certain geographical areas, because all those animals that are living in a particular geographical areas, they behave in a certain way that is defined by their location. So that's why we do cluster sampling. So I have my clusters. Then if I want to do a research, you have a choice to pick clusters. You can sample clusters, or you can go within each cluster and do maybe a purposeful sampling, or you can go within each cluster and do random sampling. So the cluster sampling is just the first part of the sampling, but other sampling methods usually follow the cluster sampling. Yeah. So you do the cluster sampling, then you make a choice on what other sampling method you are going to use after that. So, but you need to know that the initial partition of a population according to the geographical location is referred to as cluster sampling. Like I've said, sometimes we use more than one sampling method to achieve sampling. But I just want to explain the principal ones so that you can take it from there and understand the other ones. Okay, the next one is convenient sampling. This one is easy, but is often confused with purposeful sampling, which will be the next one that we are going to look at. Convenient sampling means that you have this population of that you want to conduct research on, and the members of the population are not readily available. Okay, they are scarce, they are not readily available, probably it's time consuming to do other sampling methods, probably it's very expensive to do other sampling methods. For instance, you want to do probability sampling method, it's not possible. Probably you want to get a list of all the database, it's not possible. Then the moment it's not possible to do that, then you start to think about other sampling methods. Okay, and convenience one of them. So members of the population can be so rare that I don't have the luxury to pick one and not the other. So if I can see one, then I'm happy to go with that one. So we call it convenience sampling. So what I was saying is that a convenient sample is the one that you pick those people who are available. Okay. So you go to a shopping mall, you want to interview shoppers, you can do a sampling in the shopping mall. So what will you do? You can stand by the door, and when shoppers are coming out, then you try to interview them. Okay. Or you go to a forest, you want to conduct uh, experiments on animals. So you cannot randomly sample the animals because they're in the forest. So each animal that you see, you just pick and try to include in your experiment. The same with fish. When you go to the ocean, you want to conduct an experiment on fish. You don't have the luxury to do random sampling. Okay, so you just pick any fish that you see and include in your experiment. So that's what we call convenient sample. So pick samples that are available, what you can get. Okay. So now this is different from purposeful sampling. Okay. So let's look at purposeful sampling. Okay, this one is snowball. Okay, let's look at purposeful sampling, then we'll go to snowball. Purposeful sampling, on the other hand, requires you to pick members in the population with specific characteristics. Okay, so for purposeful sampling, you don't the members of the population should not be rare. Okay, they are available. So, but within that population, I have the luxury to pick the one that I want. For instance, you can go into a cattle ranch. Okay, we are looking for specific types of bulls. You know, so I can say, okay, I'm looking for bulls with large horns. You see, so that's a purposeful sampling. So the population is not necessarily scarce. If the population is scarce and I'm forced to deal with only the one that I can see, then it becomes a convenient sample. Okay, so that's the distinction. Convenient population is very rare to get, cost very costly to get members of the population. It's very time consuming to get members of the population. So I subject any member of the population that I can see to my experiment. That is convenient. Purposeful, the population is available, but I'm looking for members with particular characteristics that I want to include in my, in my experiment. So I've used the example of a cattle ranch. You are looking for bulls with large horns. So there are many bulls. Bulls are available in the cattle ranch. You can see as many as possible, but you're looking for specific ones to include in your experiment. It becomes purposeful sampling. Okay, so now you know the difference between purposeful sampling and convenient sampling. Okay, so let's go back to snowball. Snowball sampling is only possible when there's human involvement. Okay, either you are doing the study on humans or you are doing the study on subjects that are under the care of humans. Okay, for instance, babies, their mother, you deal with the mothers or the caregivers. For instance, pets, you deal with the owner. Okay, so what is snowball now? You meet a few relevant respondents and ask them to pass on the questionnaire to other relevant respondents. Okay, so I can meet one dog owner and say, hey, I'm doing experiment with dogs. Do you know people who've got dogs? Yes, yes, yes. I know people who've got dogs. We even have a dog club, you know. Then you can give that guy the questionnaire. He can go with it to the club, and then the next day you will come back with the completed questionnaires for you. So that is snowball sampling, you know. So you meet a few respondents, then you ask them if they can pass on the questionnaire to other respondents of interest to you. Okay, so in that case, it only has to do with humans. You can't go to the ocean and say, oh, I'm doing an experiment on this fish, and then I want this fish to pass on the information to other fishes to come and do the experiment. It doesn't work like that. So you see, it's only possible with humans. You can do a certain experiment, maybe a drug-related experiment, and you ask all those who are interested, or go and tell your brothers and sisters that we are doing something like this. If they are interested, they can come. So that will be a snowball sampling. Okay. Now, we've talked about purposeful sampling, and that will be the end. So I just want to summarize it so that we have it in one package. So we started with the population of study, two types of population, the miscible population. This is the population that you can mix, immiscible population that you cannot mix. And I said on this population, the only way to conduct a random sampling is by getting a list, okay, with numbers which you can use to do a random draw. Okay. Now, then we talk about types of sampling, talk about random sampling. Random sampling must go through mixing. We've said so. So you must mix the population. Either you mix the actual population for miscible population, or you use serial number, you mix the serial numbers, or you draw random numbers using any software. So which is some kind of a mixing, then you sample. So if there's no mixing, please don't mention random sampling there. Then stratified random sampling, we are saying the population, members of the population have certain characteristics that you can use to group them into groups. And these characteristics can cause bias in my experiment if I don't take care of it. So you take care of it by dividing the population based on the characteristics, then you perform a random sampling within each group. Okay, so that is stratified random sampling. Then we talk about cluster. Cluster also is some sort of grouping. You are grouping the population, but unlike in stratified, whereby you are exploiting inherent characteristics of members of the population, for cluster, you are exploiting their geographical distribution. So members of the population must be located in one area, while the other group is located in another area. Hence, spatial or geographical distribution. Then we talk about convenience sampling. Convenience is used in situation where the population, members of the population are not easily available. Okay, they are not readily available for you to sample. So you make use of what you can get. Okay, you make use of what you can get. When you do that, then you are doing convenient sampling. Okay, snowball is when you, mostly with humans, you meet a few members of interest and ask them to identify other members of interest and pass on your questionnaires to them, or invite them to come and participate in the study. Not only passing on your questionnaires to them, you can also invite them to come and participate. So somebody of interest will tell you that, oh, I know another person that you may be interested with, or that is of interest, then I'll call that person to come. So in that way, you're doing snowball sampling. Purposeful. Purposeful looks similar to convenient, but the difference with purposeful is that you're looking for members with specific characteristics. The population is not scarce. Yeah, the members of the population are readily available, but you are looking for people with specific characteristics to include in your research. Okay. All right. So we've come to the end of the presentation. So I'm looking forward to see you in the next class. Take care. Bye-bye.